Good morning, everybody. I hope this finds you well. And we are today going to be having a look at expenses. Now, I know this isn't necessarily the most exciting topic. Hopefully, I can make it a bit more interesting for you. But it's something that I think is really important when we look at the sustainability of our business, which is what these talks are all about. And it's a really important part of how we set our prices, how we just keep a track of whether or not we're making profit. It's a really important part of our business. And I know so often I see messages around people asking, how much should I charge for a workshop? How much should I charge for my classes? What about memberships? And a big part of setting our prices is knowing our expenses as well. So I would recommend that you do a review at least annually. So when you do your end of year accounts, really go through all your expenses. I'll talk through that a bit more in a sec. And I'd also recommend maybe do it at the 6 month part, which is why I'm doing it now. And if you have the time to do it on a quarterly basis, that may be a really good part of doing a quarterly business review, because this is part of working out what's working in our business and what isn't. And it's one factor. And so I hear about teachers who'll say, oh, I'm teaching all these classes and they're really full, but somehow at the end of the month, I'm not really able to pay myself very much. So working out your expenses as well as your income is really important, because if we're just looking at our income and thinking that's what we're earning, that's going to give a really disappointing end of the month. So really, we need to look at our income minus our expenses. That's our profit. And then remember that above a certain threshold, that is taxable as well. So I think currently it's something like 12,500 a year is tax-free. If your turnover or if your profit is higher than that, then you have to remember some of that's going to be taxed as well. So what we're looking at here is, how are we going to go about reviewing our expenses? So the first thing I would say on a practical level, if you don't already, make a spreadsheet. So it is one of the things I kind of strangely enjoy, a spreadsheet, but I love the way that it allows me to get an overview of what's going on in my business. And one little tip, we have all the columns. So I'd suggest, you put your date, what the expense is, and add a category. So it could be things like travel, rent, could be home office expenses. So you can claim for a percentage of your household bills if you are spending some of your working week at home, which I think most of us do. You might have an admin day, you might teach at home via Zoom. So that's very individual to you, and you might need to speak to your accountant about what percentage, but that's something you can put in. Things like bank charges and card charge expenses. So if you take payment by card, then the card issuer will probably take a small percentage. Things like equipment, books, ongoing memberships. So have categories. And then what you can do is have a filter along the top. So you've got a heading for each of the things. So it's date, the item, the category, the amount, whatever other columns you feel are relevant. And what you can add, at least in Excel, because I'm not a Mac user, you can add a filter at the top. So you can select only, let's say, telecoms. So you can find out what you're spending per month, per year on, say, phone and broadband, for example. And so when you get these categories, that can be a good way of getting a picture of where your expenses lay. And what's important in all of this is, first of all, you really need to know what all your outgoings are. So sometimes, for example, when we're doing pricing, what might be the case is you look at the cost of the rent and the cost of the travel, and then not factoring in all the other business expenses that you have. And so you might think your profit is a certain amount, but then actually over a month, over a year, it's not the same, because we have to factor in all these other ongoing charges that we have. So a few examples of mine might be, I pay for Zoom every year. It's an ongoing membership. I pay for Canva, the professional version. There's things like that, which aren't direct kind of client costs, but they are costs that my business pays for. So we have things like that, and things like your mobile phone, things like your laptop. All of these things are business expenses, so we need to factor that in when we're working out our pricing for things, and also working out our profit. And when we're looking at things like that, what's useful then is that we can start to see what aspects of our business are more profitable and what aspects we might need to change. So, for example, I do work in clinic and in studio, and then I also do private in people's homes. So the expenses for those are slightly different. And so that can give me a picture of, well, is it more profitable working in this place or in this place? And that's one factor in deciding how to tweak a business. There are other factors around, what do you really enjoy, what gives you satisfaction, what's less stressful for you, what you have energy for. There's all of those things are important too. But if you're teaching a class in a studio and you're really busy, but then when you work out all your expenses and maybe average out your other expenses as well that are indirect, like these ongoing things like your annual membership and insurance and all these other things, you can start to see that maybe you need to make changes in your business to make it more worth the energy that you put in. So when you have a list of all your expenses, and often there'll be things that maybe you don't immediately think of. So, there might be a little bit of clothing, there might be, books that you buy. It's going through all of these and keeping track of all your expenses. And also, if we don't put all our expenses down on our accounts, then you're going to be showing a bigger profit and paying more tax. So, it's important to keep track for these reasons. But when you start to get a picture of what all your expenses are, then you can start to review what you're spending your money on. So sometimes it might be you need to maybe try and negotiate a better deal. So if you have an expense which is essential, but it's feeling like it's expensive, maybe you can shop around. Maybe there's another service provider that gives you the same thing for a better price. Maybe even your same supplier. I mean, mobile phones are a classic. If you phone up and tell them you're thinking of leaving, can they give you a better deal? Invariably, they might give you you know, more data, more credits. They might give you a better deal at the same price, or they might be able to give you the same thing for less money. So it's really worth having a look at what you're spending money on. You might need to, like I say, find a new supplier. And again, if the rent is really high in your studio and it's showing that it's really affecting your ability to pay yourself a sensible amount, maybe shop around for other studios, maybe have a chat with the owner and see, is there something that you can renegotiate that gives you a better deal? So those things are always worth looking at. And again, when you look at lots of these different areas and you make little tweaks in all of them, it can add up to a lot of money per month or per year. So it is worth doing. So that's the first thing, is can you save money? It's also worth looking at things that you pay for and making sure that you're making the most of them. Like, are you paying for a high level service, but actually you're only really using a basic level? So maybe, again, you can say to them, look, I'm paying for all this stuff, but I'm not really using it. Have you got a more basic offer? So therefore you could save money on that. Or maybe it's something that seemed like a good idea at the time and you signed up to it and forgot about, you realize you're not really using, you know, can you cancel it? That's another way that you can save money. And again, reviewing all your expenses and reminding yourself what you've actually paid for. You might realize that you'd forgotten about something really cool that, you know, you'd paid for, meant to go back later. For example, it might be an online workshop that looked amazing, or a self-study course, and you haven't finished it. You know, it's making the most of what we're investing in. And the classic things, you know, it's like a gym membership, isn't it? That people have the best intentions, they sign up to a gym membership, and after a couple of months, they're not using it. So either make the resolve to use it and make the most of it and get the benefit, or cancel it and save the money. So paying for something you're not using is just not sensible, basically. So that's the second thing that you can do. It might be worth looking at things that maybe you do use a lot, and actually you could do with a higher level of service. So that might be something where you think it's worth investing in an upgrade if it's going to save you time and effort, that actually it becomes very cost effective. So this is what I did with Canva. I used their free version for a long time, but actually there's a lot of features on there that are really useful in the paid version that save me so much time and effort. It's well worth the fee for me to do that. So these are some things that are worth looking at, especially if you can save money elsewhere. Are there things that's going to make your life easier that's worth investing in? And again, when we have a good overview of our income and all our expenses, and we can manage our expenses, it can also then give us a budget to look at things that we might want to invest in that we think we can't afford. Whereas if we can save elsewhere, or we can plan it over a period of time, we get a better picture of actually what's affordable and what's not. So sometimes it's really worth spending more on some things. So reviewing expenses isn't always about cutting down. As a good friend of me said years ago, and it was a thing that really stuck with me, he said, you can't save your way to wealth. So yes, we do not want to be wasting money unnecessarily. We definitely want to plug any leaks. But sometimes we need to invest in order to grow and in order to make life easier, maybe free up some time that we have. So there's a real value in just knowing what's going on in your business. What are the things that you're spending money on? What of the, are you claiming all the expenses you could be claiming? Again, that might be worth chatting with your accountant if you have one, or you can actually phone HMRC if you're ahead of the game and you're wanting to do things properly. I found they've been really friendly and helpful. When you're behind on payments or filing, that's not a good place to be with them. But if you're phoning up and saying, I really want to get my accounts right, can I check, is this an allowable expense? They may have web pages that they can direct you to. So definitely know what you can claim for, and review what you're spending your money on, and look at some things that you can save on. It might be, for example, so one of the things I noticed, which are small things, but that you don't notice at the time, but when it adds up, was parking charges when I'm doing home visits for people. And as a London thing, also things like ULEZ charge and congestion charge. And so when I realized over time, like, oh, actually, I'm spending quite a bit every month on parking charges, that helped me realize I need to increase my home visit fee to cover those expenses. So things like that, there might be smaller amounts of money that don't feel like a big thing at the time, because it might be £2, £3 or £4. But actually, if you're doing it regularly and then it adds up over a year, that's something that you might want to look at doing. And certainly for me, it came a tipping point where it was worth changing my car so I wasn't paying the ULEZ charge every time. So it's things like that, of knowing when is a good time to make a big investment, because actually it will make a difference for you. What are the things that you could be saving money on, and what are the things that are worth investing in? And when we've got an idea of our overall profit, then that gives us a picture of whether our pricing is okay. So if all your classes, if you're about as busy as you want to be, like your classes are reasonably full, maybe you have some privates, you're at a reasonable level of capacity. If that's not giving you, a good basic income, then there's something wrong with your pricing, most likely. So, or it could be that you're really overpaying in some areas. More likely it's on your pricing, but definitely worth looking at where you might be spending money unnecessarily. So just thinking of things that you might not always count or realize are expenses. I think I've covered most of the things that I would have for myself. So things like travel and rent, but also do check through your statements for maybe ongoing subscriptions to services. There might be things like antivirus software on your laptop. There might be other things that you subscribe to, other kind of services that you're less conscious of on a day-to-day level. So it's worth reviewing those and just seeing, do you actually need them? And are they at the right level of service? Are there things you've forgotten that you've spent money on that you should be using? And are there things that maybe you've forgotten about that you're not using that you should cancel? So it's really worth doing. And, all these little tweaks, these things of, plugging those those kind of money leaks, and making sure that you get the best service possible for the things that you are paying for, can just tip the balance in a way that makes a big difference. You know, if it was something that, you know, tipped the balance to being, say, an extra £100 a month, you know, that can make a big difference for people, in terms of if that's what it meant, you could pay yourself an extra £100 a month by tweaking your expenses. You know, that's a nice change, you know, in your lifestyle, and that might allow you to pay for something nice for your family, or for a bit of self-care for yourself, or putting it towards a holiday. So all these things are really worth doing. And I think just on a personal level, when you feel that you're across your business in terms of not only knowing what you're bringing in, but also having a good sense of your expenses as well, what I find is really useful with that, and because I've been working a really long time self-employed, and I've seen that my expenses are generally quite consistent. It's not like really massive one year and really tiny the next. So I do have a good idea roughly per year what my expenses are, and I'm keeping track of my income. It really helps me calculate what I can safely pay myself as a regular monthly salary, which is something that I do for myself now and have for a few years, is I just have a fixed amount so that in my personal life, I can budget. And then at the end of the year, if there's a bit of surplus, great, I can give myself a bonus at the end of the year. But being able to pay yourself a steady income gives you so much peace of mind, and, you know, takes away a lot of the anxiety of just like not knowing what's going on and only working it out once a year when you do your, you know, your annual return on your self-assessment. That keeping track of all these things as you go is just going to give you that peace of mind. So it will help with your pricing, so you can work out, you know, when you need to make a tweak on your pricing, can help you save money, can help you know when you can invest and how much. If there's, you know, you might want to buy yourself a new laptop, for example. So you can budget for that and spread it over time, and know that it's safe to invest in something, and know that it's safe to pay yourself a certain amount. And then it also helps you with your business goals as well, because when you've got clarity over what your profit is, then that might then help you make these goals around what your targets are. And it can also help you change your business. So if it's really clear that one aspect of your business is just really nowhere near profitable enough, and it doesn't look possible to make it profitable, that's most likely something you should drop. And then you can save the time and the energy and the heartache on that, and really plow that into the things that are working really well for you. Or it might free up the time and energy to create something new that you want for yourself. So it might be that you want to create a library of videos as a product that you could sell, but you don't have the time for it, because you're, you know, really flogging yourself teaching, you know, a particular class that takes a lot of your time and energy, and it isn't really paying you very much. So it's just being able to get that big picture view of what's going on in your business, so you can make these strategic decisions and make your business more sustainable, so it works for you, so you've got time and energy for the things that you love, so that you're then going to give more to the people that you're working for, and just give a better service overall. So although something like doing a spreadsheet of your expenses sounds deadly dull, and maybe I'm just weird, but when I'm in the in the right mood for it. I actually find it really exciting because it's not just boxes with numbers in. It's a picture of my business and it's a picture of my lifestyle. And if I was doing it for other people, it probably wouldn't be so exciting. But because it's for my business and this is about my life and, you know, my child's life and my business, you know, these things are really important. And so it is really exciting then when you realize, like, oh, I actually can invest in something that's going to make life easier. I was like, aha, I found out where there's a bit of wasted money. Like, let's just cut that off there. And then that's a saving. Or knowing that, hang on a minute, I seem to be paying rather a lot for my mobile phone contract. I think I need to renegotiate that. But if we don't do these reviews, then it's much harder to notice the things that you know, that might need tweaking and changing. And like I say, like, it doesn't take much to make a big difference. So if you're already, and hopefully you are, making some profit, you know, if you can just tweak that a little bit by cutting your expenses maybe by 5%, or getting better deals, and then tweaking your prices, say by 5%, that's just all pure profit then that you can, and that could be the thing that really changes your life. And certainly in my experience, those small changes actually accumulate into making a real material difference in what you can pay yourself, and therefore your quality of life, and therefore the quality of what you deliver as well. So it's a win all round. So I'm hoping that's given you a little bit of a push and some motivation to do this. I know it's not always the most exciting thing to think about, but once you've got good spreadsheets set up, it's quite easy then just to say once a month, go through your bank statement, just upload these things in there. And these days you can probably cut and paste from your online banking as well. Like, it doesn't have to be an onerous task, but have these categories and look at these things and notice, like, over a month, over 6 months, where's your biggest outgoings? What's your biggest expense in your business? And is there a way that you can make that work better for you? And again, looking at things that you might have forgotten about, or things that you don't need anymore, but you never got around to cancelling, and it's just on an ongoing direct debit. So things like that, it's really worth doing, and it's so satisfying when you fix those things and when you've got a clear picture of what's going on. It just makes you feel so much more in control. And when we feel in control, we feel much more grounded. There's much less fear and anxiety, and then we can make those decisions that make a difference. So do let me know how you get on with that. Be lovely to hear in the comments below if there is something where you found something that's made a difference for you. It'd be really lovely for you to share that. And yeah, let me know how you get on. So I wish you a very lovely rest of your week, and I'll see you same time next week. Take care.